A boy disappeared. Then the phone rang. You're looking for your son. Do you have him? A pause. Yes, but he was already dead. It was winter, but the sunlight that afternoon felt strangely warm. In an apartment complex in Apgujeong, Gangnam, children were playing outside as if the day would end like any other. Among them was a 9-year-old boy, Lee Hyung-ho, an energetic child who loved being around his friends. Nothing about that moment seemed unusual. After spending time with the other children, he wandered off on his own for a while. At first, no one thought much of it, but as the sun began to fall and the children returned home one by one, something started to feel off. Hyung-ho did not come back. At first, his parents assumed he was still nearby. Maybe he had followed a friend home, or maybe he was still somewhere in the apartment complex. But as the minutes passed, that small concern slowly grew into something heavier. Hyung-ho was not the kind of child who stayed out late without a word. So his parents went outside and began searching. They checked the playground, the parking lot, and the paths between the buildings, calling his name again and again. But there was no answer. The apartment complex, once filled with laughter, had fallen quiet, and in that silence, one thought became impossible to ignore. Something was wrong. Back inside the apartment, the fear only grew. His parents were caught between waiting a little longer and calling the police, and then the phone rang. The sound cut through the silence like a warning. The father picked it up. "Hello?" For a moment, there was nothing. Then a voice came through, low, calm, and controlled. "You're looking for your son." The father froze, his heart pounding as he forced out the question. "Do you have him?" There was a pause, and then, "Yes." And in that moment, everything changed. The man did not shout. He did not sound nervous. If anything, he sounded calm, too calm. "If you want him alive, listen carefully. Prepare the money." The father hesitated. "How much?" The amount was overwhelming. Then came the warning. "If you call the police, he dies." In the background, there were faint sounds, cars passing, wind moving, open air, suggesting the call was coming from outside. "Is he okay?" A pause. "He's alive." But the child's voice was never heard. The call ended, but the silence did not last long. Soon the doorbell rang and detectives arrived at the apartment. Even in the middle of the night, the investigation had already begun. "Tell us everything from the beginning." The father described the voice, the tone, and the background sounds. Traffic, wind, open space. The detectives exchanged glances. One conclusion stood out. The call had been made from a public phone, and from that moment, the case began to expand. By the next day, the search had spread across the city. Detectives analyzed call times, locations, and possible routes. But the kidnapper was careful. Each call was short, each location was different. There was no clear pattern, no mistake to follow. The detectives marked possibilities again and again, but nothing connected. This wasn't random. This wasn't panic. Whoever had done this was planning. Days later, the phone rang again. The father answered immediately. "Hello?" The same voice returned, calm and unchanged. "Did you prepare the money?" "We're trying. If you're late, he dies." The father swallowed hard before speaking again. "Please, let me hear him just once." For a moment there was silence. Then a faint sound came through. A child, crying, "Hyung-ho!" But before another word could be spoken, the line went dead. Hope appeared and vanished in the same moment. The police prepared the ransom exchange carefully, planning every move in advance. The money was ready and the instructions were followed exactly. But the kidnapper stayed ahead. He changed locations, canceled meetings, and watched from a distance, always in control. This was not panic. This was calculated. He wasn't reacting. He was leading. Days turned into weeks. The house never truly rested. Every phone call brought fear, and every silence felt heavier than the last. Outside, the country watched, hoping for a safe return. But inside the investigation, a different thought began to grow. Quietly, slowly, what if they were already too late? Then the truth finally emerged, and it was worse than anyone had imagined. Lee Hyung-ho had already been killed not long after the abduction. The calls, the threats, the ransom demands, all of it had come after his death. The hope had never been real, and when that truth was revealed, the country fell silent. The case never truly ended. It remained in memory, in silence, and in questions without answers. Who was the man on the phone? Who spoke so calmly and disappeared without a trace? Even now, no one knows, because some crimes do not end when the call is over. They remain in the space where the truth should have been. And that is why we still remember that day. This story ends here. But in the darkness, stories remain. Will you stay for the next one? Dark Case Hub.